Hey, good evening, everyone. Good evening, good evening. Thanks so much for tuning in. Tonight is Woke Wednesdays. We do this every single Wednesday at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Every single week, we discuss a social justice topic. Last week, what did we talk about? We talked about mental health in the Latinx community. And this week, we are talking about midterm elections. This is a huge topic, very exciting time. Everyone, please go out and vote. And tonight, we have the pleasure of having a knowledgeable young man on the show representing New Florida Majority. Would you like to tell everybody who you are, what you do?
Greetings, everybody. My name is M.Y. Osahar. I work with New Florida Majority. I'm the electoral field director. New Florida Majority, if you have not heard of it, you should hear of it, and you should definitely check us out at thenewfloridamajority.org. We are an independent political organization that focuses on minority and marginalized people, making sure we increase their vote, and we fight a lot of good fights, so definitely check us out there.
And I mean, shout out to your hair, right? I mean, the locks out here just out and about.
These are the locks of justice.
The locks of justice. Man, it sounds like a superhero. Oh man, the locks of justice is on the show tonight.
That's it.
So y'all, please feel free to ask questions. Tonight we kind of want to have a conversation about midterm elections, especially if you're, whatever state you're in. We're coming to you from Florida, so we're going to be touching more on Florida amendments. But please, there are a lot of great websites out there kind of discussing all the amendments being discussed, who's voting or who's running for office. One that we're kind of looking at tonight that I've been using and why I've been kind of using, bereadytovote.org. So bereadytovote.org. Let me type this in here, bereadytovote.org is a great website. It kind of tells you the yes and no's of voting on which particular amendment. So let's get started, man. And why is voting, number one, why is voting important? Let's start basic. Why do y'all think voting is important? Are y'all registered to vote? So please feel free to type in the comments. Are y'all registered to vote? Do y'all think voting is important? Do you think voting is important?
I think voting is so important that it should be mandatory. I think it should be mandatory. I do believe that it should be a national holiday. I believe that every single state or city that's having an election that day should shut down and allow people to focus purely on voting. I'm a strong believer in civic engagement. I believe that everybody has a voice and everybody should use that voice. Even if you have no opinion on it, you should take your behind down to the poll and write, I have no opinion, to let everybody know that, hey, I exercise this particular right. A lot of people fought for the right to vote.
A lot of people died.
A lot of people died for it, more so than others, depending on what community or what culture you're coming from. But a lot of people died for it through centuries, just to have the right to speak up and say, hey, no, this isn't right. Hey, we need this. Hey, this isn't fair, whatever the case is. And the way that we do that these days is we get out and we vote.
I couldn't agree more with you. Real quick, people are saying hello. Bomba, greetings. Andres, greetings. Kejata, greetings. Everyone, thanks so much for tuning in tonight. Crystal, welcome to the show. This is your first time tuning in. We do this every single Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Every week is a different topic. I think we're going to have a follow-up definitely to this episode, going even more into depth with the amendments in Florida specifically. So please feel free to ask questions and post comments, whatever questions you have. Please feel free to let us know. And I think you make a beautiful point that everyone should be voting, right? I believe that you shouldn't have to register to vote. I believe at 18, this should be automatic. I think, if anything, voter registration is a type of violence. I think it's a type of voter suppression. I think that at 18, everyone should automatically be enrolled. All you got to do is show up and vote.
I kind of want to say that at some point, it was like that. I think when I turned 18, and I'm not going to date myself as far as telling how old
About
I am.
46?
You're 46?
No, I thought you were 46.
40s.
Oh, I didn't know. The locks of justice.
Yes, I am
the locks
46.
of
I want
justice,
you to know this. When you go down to your local store and you buy that shea butter, this is what you get at 46.
So, hey, we're out here, advertising shea butter. Shout out to shea butter.
This is what
Shout out to Jergens, original scent.
No, but I believe that, when I graduated from high school, I think we had to register for the draft or something like that, and also register to vote. I think that was mandatory, and I was actually informed that a few years after I graduated high school that they put an end to that, which is, unfortunate. I don't want to force anybody into doing anything, but I think that was one of those things that it put people in a good position to speak up when they were ready to, because they don't have to pop up one day and an election's happening, go to the voting booth and find out, hey, I never actually registered to vote and it's past the registration date. No, they registered as soon as they turned 18 and they're all set. They just go in there, put their mark on the paper, voice their opinion about what's going on, and keep it moving. But we have a lot of people, especially in Florida, they have not registered to vote. It skips, it skips their thought or whatever the case is. I don't know how that happens, but it happens. We also have a lot of people that move to the state of Florida and they forget to change their voting base, change their address and things of that particular nature. So a lot of things play out into it, but we want to make sure that everybody has the ability to vote. You're already on paper. You're good to go when you're ready to speak up.
And piggybacking off that, if you show up to register to vote on the day of voting and you believe that you have been registered to vote and they tell you no and they try to turn you away, do not let them turn you away. Ask them for a provisional ballot. A provisional ballot. What this does is that you can cast your vote, and that vote actually gets put into a special envelope and gets counted afterwards. So do not let them turn you away. All right. So ask for a provisional ballot. That is huge. And I see Bill on 25. Welcome to the show. Thank you everyone for tuning in. Again, tonight we're talking about midterm elections, the importance of voting. And we're gonna get into a couple of specifics because tonight we're based out of Florida. So we're going to talk a little bit more about Florida, but definitely in Georgia, I think, what's in the Stacey Abrams, I believe?
Oh, my goodness, yes.
Definitely, obviously, Woke Wednesdays is very much on the left. I think you said it perfectly earlier today. On paper, I'm Democrat, but I'm actually independent. The only reason I put Democrat so I can vote in the primaries, because in Florida, that's what you have to do. Mm-hmm. So obviously, I'm going to be pushing more people who lean more to the left. So vote for the locks of justice as well and shea butter. But in Georgia, Stacey Abrams is running. She's doing big things. I mean, I love that I'm seeing more people wake up, which is a good thing. I mean, how do you feel? You're a part of an organization that focuses on this.
Ooh, a lot of people are definitely more involved, and that is on both sides of the fence. And even if they don't choose the side of the fence, they still are more aware of what's going on. We could definitely have people have different theories on why that is. I can say that things that are going on inside of the federal government right now are causing people to pay more attention to what's going on because they didn't care too much. We were on autopilot. We allow people to make decisions for us. And today we're here. We're here now. So sometimes people have to hit brick walls to understand that there's a wall there, and that we have to navigate things appropriately. We have to choose our direction. We have to speak up about which direction we're actually going in. So, whatever got us here, we're here. And a lot of people are, like I said, a lot of people are waking up and they're doing their due diligence.
Yeah. So. This is why, and especially with midterm elections, I guess, I've just seen people trying to be more aware, trying to gain more knowledge about what are midterm elections. This past primaries, that's the first time I've voted in a primary. Mm-hmm. And I just turned 30, nice. Based on age. So that means in 12 years, span of 12 years, I had an opportunity to vote like 3 times, I think in primaries, only done it once. But it's part of this, it's a process, part of waking up. Shout out to all the guests in the building. So
when you said everybody's waking up, you meant yourself too?
I meant myself too, absolutely. There's a process, bro. Learning is a process. Education is a process.
It's true.
Unfortunately, it takes sometimes horrible things for people to wake up.
It's true.
But, the point is they wake up at some point.
No, you're absolutely right. And I agree. And one of our challenges, and I'll say this, as a side note, is that we don't get involved in politics. Well, certain cultures don't get involved in politics until we start reaching the age of 30, when we're probably homeowners, when we're married and things like that, when we hit adult life. But that starts that that need for knowledge and that need to be involved inside your community, that civic engagement, that needs to start a lot earlier. And that's one of the things that me personally, I'm working toward making happen. College students, high school students, you have to know what's going on in your community.
Absolutely.
And we're going to cover, some of those things, how it will impact the future.
And one of the tough things, or one of the realities of life, is that these policies start affecting you from before you were even born.
Yes.
Like, that's the crazy thing,
Yes.
right? And the fact that it takes even 30 years to start to get involved, it reveals something about our society as well, right? We try to keep poor people, communities that are disenfranchised, ignorant.
Yes.
We try to keep them out of the loop. Even tonight, when we're reading stuff on policies, we're like, damn, the language that people are using in these policies are just complicated. Real quick, we got a question from KJada_ saying, what do you do with someone who refuses to wake up? So I'm sure you've dealt with some folks. Go ahead, bro. Drop some knowledge on us.
If they refuse to wake up, and that is going to be something that you don't want to burn yourself out trying to do. I'll say this: sometimes people come to where they need to be at their own time. It's just like, but I'm not, putting anybody down, but it's similar to trying to teach a child an arithmetic. Or you might try to teach them the basics of life and whatever the case is. You might try to teach a 10-year-old something that they're not going to get until 10 years later when they're 20. They're going to be like, I remember I was told this. And that's how people work. You can tell them everything until they're blue in the face, but they might not get it right there. So the best thing that you can do is lay that foundation for them.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, you can say you did your part. At the end of the day, one day they'll know that this information is available to them, and the best part about it, they can never say I didn't know. Yeah. They knew. You told them, and at some point they're going to come to the point where they're going to utilize that information. Hopefully, and that's the best way to go about it. But you will, if depending on who this person is in your life, will determine how much effort and energy you put into trying to wake them up. But don't burn yourself out, because you'll become jaded, and you will not want to spread any more knowledge to anybody else. Drop those jewels and keep it moving.
Absolutely. And I think Bilal is kind of piggybacking off your point. Bilal 25 is saying you can't help anyone that doesn't want to help themselves. All you can do is share your knowledge. It's interesting. It's kind of like that old head kind of trying to impart wisdom on you, and they're like, nah, bump that. I ain't trying to listen to you right now. And it's not until you fall and just bust your ass that it's like, oh man, I should have listened that first time.
Brick walls.
So definitely pick your battles too, right?
Yep.
I guess at this point in age, sometimes the personal, like the interpersonal stuff affects me, but I'm more so thinking about the system that creates a person like this in the first place, right? So sometimes you have to also kind of figure out how to address and go straight at the system, sometimes instead of just the person. So that's something I'm still kind of trying to think through. It's tough though. It's definitely tough. But midterm elections. A lot of folks tend to vote in national elections.
Crazy.
But midterm elections usually don't have a good turnout for. This year though, we're seeing kind of people more be kind of excited about midterm elections. What do you think? What are you thinking here in Florida? What are you kind of feeling?
I will definitely fully 100% agree with you that normally people turn out to the federal elections, when they're voting for the highest seat in the land, the presidential election. Locally, we have no idea who sits inside of certain seats. We don't know who our judges are, and these are things that we vote on. We don't know who our judges are. We barely know our mayors and our governors, these local elections. And we don't even know who sits on our school board, which is very interesting. So, and I'm not going to say, I'm not speaking from a place of like, I know all of this. Like again, every single day I learn something new.
It's a process, man.
It's definitely a process, but I'm just putting out there that we are not aware of the people that impact our day-to-day lives. Despite what anybody thinks, the President of the United States does not really impact your day-to-day life. He does not impact the road that you drive to work on. He does not impact the school that your kids sit in. He does not impact the judicial system within your local area, not so much. He doesn't impact those different things.
At least not in like a direct way.
Not direct.
Yeah.
Not direct. I mean, some things come down the line.
Yeah.
You know, some things, you know, depending on what the situation, some things definitely come down the line. But, you know, how they treat your kid in school, you know, the disciplinary actions that they have, you know, if your kid gets suspended for saying the wrong thing, all these different things. It's like, it's weird. Like, we don't focus on these things until something terrible happens. And then when something terrible happens, we don't even know where to direct that particular energy because we never knew. And I'm saying we because I'm just encompassing all people at this particular point. Some people do know, but for the most part, a lot of people don't. So again, anyway, like he asked, midterm elections are important because these midterm elections impact your day-to-day life more so than any federal position or election.
So real quick, we're also going live on Facebook Live tonight. Feel free to follow our Woke Wednesdays. We got a question from Soki asking, what do you say to someone who thinks it doesn't even matter if you vote or not, if they feel the government will do whatever they want anyways without insulting their ignorance or their intelligence? Sorry.
That is a great question that I think I asked myself recently. Me personally, if it doesn't matter, then just come with me and vote anyway. You know, what is it going to hurt? What is it going to hurt? If you strongly believe that it doesn't matter, then why not? You know, but also to those people that say it doesn't matter if you vote or not, I will point out the election that's going on in Georgia and that happens across many states when we talk about voter suppression. If your vote didn't matter, they would not go through the lens to make sure that you do not vote.
Yeah, gerrymandering.
They wouldn't do gerrymandering. They wouldn't do any of these things because it's a lot of time and effort that goes into
a lot
of money that goes into preventing you from voting. So, you know, saying it doesn't matter, the government's going to do what they want, and then you see people spending millions of dollars to make sure that you don't voice your opinion. You know, that's a big contradiction. So I would say, you know, to those people, I would drop those 2 jewels on them. If it doesn't matter, just come vote. You know, help me out as a friend, help me out as a family member. I want to make sure that this is an issue that's important to me. Yeah. And, you know, can you know, come voice your opinion on it. And also if they want to go deep into it, like, hey man, these people are spending a lot of money to make sure that you don't say anything at all.
And also, to be honest, I don't put so I'm a skeptic too. I don't put all my faith in the law, right? To me, voting isn't the end all be all. Like there are other things that we can do aside from voting to enact change, to try to emancipate ourselves, to redress oppression. There are a lot of things that we can do aside from voting. In fact, voting, the law, I think, can be a scary thing sometimes because there have been many things that have been legal, but that haven't been moral. All right, so legality does not, by any means, that's not the benchmark. That's not what deems something as moral. You know, slavery was legal in this country. Up until the 1990s, in most states, a husband could legally rape his wife. Up until the 1990s, in most states in the United States. So legality has often been on the wrong side of many communities that are disenfranchised. But for that reason, in and of itself, we should be voting, right? I think we just need to get out there. We need to be informed on it, which is why tonight we're going to talk about some of the amendments that kind of stick out to us and things that definitely New Florida Majority is kind of backing, right? And to be clear, too, there are 13 amendments in Florida. I think you said in the last election, no, who told me? That there were like 4 amendments, I think, in the last election. But this time there are 13. This is big. And you did tell me that they change this, or they can amend something every 20 years?
Yeah, you're on the way to, once something is inside of the Constitution, it takes a very long time for it to be revisited unless, you know, someone, you know, gets out there and starts a whole petition, you know, to try to get something eradicated from the Constitution or something added into the Constitution. So I say that to say that it's very important that you know what you're voting for. And I'll say this before we actually get started. I'm going to say a couple things before we get started. If you're confused on anything on the ballot, which a lot of people are going to be because just how it's worded, like, it's crazy. vote no. And I say vote no specifically instead of skipping, because I'm not going to go into how the whole voting thing goes, but just in summary, if you skip it, then your vote, that skip vote, goes to the majority of that particular vote. So let me see if I can give like a quick example of how that works. If there were 7 people that voted or were supposed to vote, and you voted or you skipped the vote, 3 or 2 people voted no, and 4 people voted yes, or whatever the case is, your skip vote goes to those four. It goes in that particular pile.
So whatever the majority is.
Yeah, whatever the majority is, it puts them over the top. So if you're confused about it, if you're unaware of it, you're not comfortable with it, whatever the case may be, vote no on it. Do not skip. Put something down.
Why not put yes? Or but you're saying put something down.
Well, I'm saying put no, because a lot of times when you vote no, it's keeping whatever is in place, and you can live to fight another day and vote on it, because it's not actually going to be inside of the Constitution. As I said before, once it's in the Constitution, you're going to wait. You're going to sit and wait for the time to arrive when that's revisited, and you might not even be around to do that, but it's going to fall on the next generation to deal with whatever you did. So you always want to leave things open
I see what you're saying.
to come back to it at a later date, if that makes sense.
No, yeah, that makes sense. All right, so we have 13 amendments in this year's ballot.
I want to say something on the point that you were
Oh, go ahead.
You were mentioning about how
The legality and morality?
Legality and morality, and
Yeah.
I'll touch on the fact that, yes, everything that is legal isn't always moral, and depending on how far you go back or how good you are as a history buff, if you're good with dates or whatever the case is, a lot of laws were put in place by a handful of people in a room. So this is at a time where everybody did not have the ability to vote, and this deals with white people as well. If you weren't a landowner, you didn't have the ability to vote. And I say that to say this, these things that are immoral were probably put on paper by a handful of people, and even if a lot of people did have the ability to vote, they're on paper because a handful of people just got up one day and said, "This is what I want."
Wealthy
and the rest
white
of the people
man.
didn't say, "Wealthy white man."
Yeah, let's be real about it.
And the rest of the people just sat down and say, "Hey, I'm not going to go vote." So, don't let that happen again. Don't let a situation occur again where something's legal but it's immoral. Don't let that happen. You have the ability to change those type of things right now.
Wealthy, white, straight men. Let's talk about it. People able. The list goes on. But so we have 13 amendments in Florida.
13.
The 13th one is to prohibit dog racing. I'm definitely trying to vote to prohibit dog racing, against any animal abuse. But so real quick because we're going to try to hit on mostly Amendment 4 and Amendment 11. But one thing that we talked about before the show was that some of these amendments are kind of tricky because they have like 2 parts to them that seem to not really kind of go with each other. So for example, Amendment 9 talks about offshore drilling, and then also banning vaping inside places like e-cigarettes and that type of stuff. So we were I was wondering if you could kind of provide a little insight on that.
So, I'm going to assume that if you're viewing this particular show, you are leaning left. Or actually, I'm going to assume basically that you care to some degree about the environment. And so this language, how it starts is it talks about offshore drilling, and we're talking about So this is again Amendment 9, and what he was mentioning is how they sandwich amendments together.
Yeah.
So that makes it a real difficult because one thing you really might hate and you want to get rid of it, but they put it in there with something that you don't want to get rid of. So it's really tricky, and they do this on purpose to confuse you. They do this on purpose to challenge you, to make you vote in a certain way. This is what happens. So Amendment 9, and he did give you the website, and I'm not going to tell you what to vote for or what not to vote for. We're just going to talk about, what it says and some of the language that's in there. So it prohibits offshore oil and gas drilling, and it prohibits vaping in enclosed indoor workspaces. First, I'm going to talk about the indoor workspaces ban on vaping. A lot more people are vaping now instead of smoking cigarettes or smoking whatever you guys are, getting down with. So they're choosing that over, cigarettes or whatever, whatever method they use of smoking. This does not fully ban that. What it is that you have to have a permit. That location, that organization, that part, that building, venue has to have a permit to allow indoor vaping. So you guys are safe, because more than likely, whatever venue that you're dealing with is going to pay whatever fee they need to pay to make it more inclusive for people to come inside and vape and comfort. So I wouldn't, me personally, I don't worry about that too much because it doesn't automatically kick it out. But they tied it in with offshore drilling, right? And most people don't want to look off of South Beach, Hollywood Beach, Hollandale Beach. They don't want to look off the shore and see a big oil rig. More importantly, they don't want some small, quote unquote, small leak off the shore of Hollywood Beach, Hollandale Beach, South Beach, some small oil leak that's going to impact the state of Florida. And this is huge. It's a really big discussion because
clearly we live in South Florida.
Yeah, we live in South Florida. Our whole thing is tourism and people coming here just for the beach. We have people that fly from all over or own property here just so they can come here in the winter and continue to enjoy the summer months, even though it's wintertime in Florida. So.
Oh, he's moving the locks. He's moving the locks. He's moving the locks. He's moving the locks.
The locks of justice are moving.
The locks of justice are moving.
We did provide you with one website. There's another one if you go to dos.myflorida.com and go to the Constitution's link. It's a breakdown of all of the amendments that are going to be in here in the actual full text. It's a little thick. I'm just going to let you know that right now. But one of the things that I want to point out is inside of this language, the main thing I want to point out as far as offshore drilling. It talks about banning offshore drilling to Florida's outermost boundaries. Now, all of that, what that's saying is that I want to ban offshore drilling within the outermost boundaries of Florida. Guess how far that is? Do they know?
No.
I don't know if they know.
No.
Okay. So that sounds like it's far, but again, you will be able to look off the shoreline and you will be able to see it even if you approve this. So what happens is that the outermost boundaries of Florida ranges from up to 13 miles is Florida, or the continental U.S., however you want to look at it. 13 miles. So 14 miles out, they will be able to do it. 15 miles out, they will be able to do it. I don't know if you guys know a whole lot about current, but 14 miles is nothing. It takes nothing for a sea turtle or some type of sea life to swim 14 miles in less than an hour. So that, whatever happens in that particular distance, you're still going to get hit. So what this does is it bans it to the outermost, and that's not far enough. And I want you guys to take a really good close look at that because, it's very, very confusing. I'm not telling you which way to vote, but I believe that it's not good enough. And then once you put this in the Constitution, it's only going to ban it to the outermost. So that discussion is not going to come up again for like another 20 years, or unless somebody goes out and gets a hell of a lot of petition signatures to bring it back on the ballot. And let me tell you that there are a lot of corporations that stands to make a lot of money that will fight you with a lot of power to make sure that you don't even get it back on the ballot at some point. So I would definitely say that there's a better way of doing this. And if they really, really were trying, they would not put this in here with another amendment. It'll be straightforward, straight text, plain English, like on, we're going to talk about Amendment 4. That's straightforward. There's nothing else in there, no hidden language. This is what it's talking about, and you'll see that throughout other amendments. But this one, you have some sandwich in there. You read the text, it's very confusing and thick, and it takes for a person to do a lot of research to actually know about what the outermost limits are. What does this mean?
So the outermost, it's about 9 miles, right? Or no, 9 miles and past that?
So it's up to 3 miles is going to belong to that city. So if you go to South Beach, 3 miles out, up to 3 miles out is going to be South Beach's property boundary lines. 3 to 9 is going to be the state of Florida. I think this might vary depending on what state, but 3 to 9. And I'm going to say, for safety reasons, since we're on the web right now, up to 12 miles. Will be the boundaries of that particular state. In this state, we're going to say Florida. 12 miles is nothing.
So I'm setting.
I drive 35. I don't know,
because I'm seeing here. So we're getting a question. So if we vote no, good enough, then we are stuck with status quo for. Okay, so if we vote no, not good enough, then we are stuck with status quo for 20 years.
No, absolutely not. If you vote no, this does not go into the Constitution. If you vote yes, this goes into the Constitution and it's going to be there for at least 20 years. If you vote no, you have the ability to fight another day, and we're constantly fighting against offshore drilling and fracking in Florida right now. There isn't a ban up right now, like a set ban, but it's an everyday fight, and that allows us to go back in at some point and say, hey, there will be no drilling off the shore of Florida, period. Because how serious it is again, Florida is extremely dependent on its tourist industry. Extremely dependent. You see, I don't know if you guys have been online and you saw the different reports about the red tide that's going on, but that's seriously impacting the coastal regions, and that's a lot of livelihoods, and that carries over into the state. So yeah, whatever you vote no for in this election means that it's not going to go into the Constitution.
As long as you don't get outvoted, obviously.
Oh yeah. If you don't get outvoted, if it is not voted into action, that means that it does not go into the Constitution. That means that you have the ability to go back in at some point and redefine what you need inside of this particular Constitution, set in stone, that it does not happen for X amount of time.
I like this that you get to live to fight another day. That's not a Friday reference. But you live to fight another day. Yeah. But yeah, and I think that's a great point, especially because not everyone's going to be extremely knowledgeable on all these amendments, right? Because it's absolutely difficult. But let's focus on, let's go to Amendment 4.
Amendment 4.
Amendment 4 is the one that a lot of people are talking about. And real quick, let's not let Amendment 4 also kind of mask the other 12 amendments going on as well, right? So just to be clear, there are 13 amendments, but tonight we're going to kind of talk a little bit more about Amendment 4 because this is something that all of them, I think every amendment affects different demographics, right? Whether racially, class-wise, whatever, gender, just different demographics. But this one in particular is a sensitive one, because especially right now we're seeing that in some states marijuana is being legalized, right? And some people are sitting in prison, right? Some people are sitting in prison for all these years. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, people now get to sell it, and be okay. So, Amendment 4, what is it?
Amendment 4 automatically restores the voting rights to people that have served their time with a felony, and I'm going to say this just super emphasis on this. Non-violent crimes, meaning no murderers and sexual offenders.
Yep.
Because, that's a whole nother case, that's a whole nother thing, so they do not have their rights restore automatically. They would have to go through a whole other process through the clemency board, through the state of Florida to fight to get their rights back. But we're not even talking about that. We're talking about non-violent criminals. So, like you mentioned, the marijuana, the quote-unquote war on drugs. So the war on drugs, personally, I'm going to say this personally, the war on drugs was trash, and it was created to attack certain demographics, as you mentioned before.
Poor black and brown people. Let's be real about it, yeah.
Black and brown people.
Led to mass incarceration, basically, yeah.
Mass incarceration. So, right now we have private prisons, and as I mentioned, Amendment 4 and restoring rights and how mass incarceration goes, there is another amendment that also, kind of impacts us as well. We'll get to that one. But Amendment 4 automatically restores the rights to returning citizens, is what we call them. And it's important.
I like that. I like that.
I loved it when I first like, that's awesome. Man, really?
I like that. Sounds good. Yeah.
Stop demonizing people because
demonizing, humanizing. Yeah.
So it's like one of those things where a person has done something that is against the law, but again, we know legal is not moral, so we're just going to keep that there on the table, for edification. But they do their time, whatever it is, probation, 6 years, 20 years, whatever the case is. How the state of Florida is set up right now is once you get out, once you do your time, once you do the time that the judge has sentenced you to, you get extra punishment. You get to shut up until, you wait 4 or 5 years to be able to qualify to get your rights back, whatever the case is. And that's silencing people. And we can't have that in our communities. We can't have that in black and brown communities. Because this is going to link to the conversation that we had earlier in the beginning, is about how important midterm elections are, because these impact our local everyday lives. So you have X amount of people, I'm not going to drop numbers, I just want to talk about impact. You have a lot of people that are returning to their communities, but do not have the ability to impact change. We don't have the ability, or they don't have the ability to engage fully civically. And that's a problem. They're silenced. Yeah. And the original term for this was civil death. If you guys want to go look that up or Google that civil death and see how far it goes back. But you're silencing people, and they don't have the ability to be fully engaged in their community. Meaning that a person doesn't, if they return from after serving their time, does not have the ability to vote on the school board in which their child goes to. They don't have the ability to impact the change or that impacts their child's life. They just have to, sit there and shut up. And we don't want to deal with that type of thing. Everybody has a voice. So, in short, that's just how I feel about it. Because you have a lot of local elections. You have your judges that might be unfair. You might have judges that are more fair that you want to put into a seat. You might have, depending on what county you're in, some cities or counties have sheriffs. You have the ability to vote on. So different things that impact your normal life, you have the ability to vote on. School board, mayor. Right now we're talking about a governor. We're national race, a governor. A lot of different things that impact, and you need to have the ability to have a say-so on it. And we can't have over 1 million people that don't have the ability to, voice their opinion. That's craziness.
Real quick, we're getting a side note here.
Side note.
The book Chasing the Scream is full of facts about the failure that is the war on drugs. Another good book, The New Jim Crow by Michelle Alexander. Another great book is The First Civil Right by Naomi Murakawa. She's a Japanese professor in the African American Studies program at Princeton. And if you don't like to read, or whatever, 13th, Netflix, is, I think, award-winning documentary, absolutely amazing, by Ava DuVernay. Please feel free to go watch. Any other recommendations you have?
Covered.
Yeah. So the point is, there's a lot of good information out there, and if anything else, Wikipedia, come on, it's always a go-to.
And I'll say that along with the written text and the audiobooks and the books, you probably know somebody right now that is a felon. There is no quote-unquote look for a felon. and they don't have the ability to vote. If you run across, if you have certain you don't want to be too intrusive, but if you know somebody or you know somebody, like sit down and have a conversation with them. How do they feel about not being able to vote? How does that make them feel? How does it make them feel that they don't have a say in the things that go on around them? Imagine you being in a relationship and you don't ever get to pick what restaurant you go to. This is like really simplifying it, and it's not. But I'm just like, you don't have a choice in nothing that goes on, from the good, the bad, and the super ugly. You don't have any say so in it. But get to know people. There's a lot of people out here that are suffering from this right now, unfairly at that. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, and just try to become more knowledgeable on prisons too. Florida actually holds the most under 18, so children, right? In adult prisons. In adult prisons, Florida holds the most under 18 children in adult prisons. These kids are getting raped, beaten, and sometimes inside of a prison. So I mean, it's absolutely despicable. But yeah.
Yeah. So a lot of people are, and again, somebody mentioned the war on drugs. In short, a lot of people are in prison for things that they really shouldn't be in there for. They shouldn't be going through these particular conditions. A lot of people go into prison, and this, based on your personal belief, who you know, whatever the case is, but a lot of people go into prison, jail, whatever the case is, for, somewhat minor offenses, non-violent things, and their life is pretty much together. They just made some type of mistake. But when they come out, based on what they experienced inside, they're a completely different person, and they shouldn't have been in there in the first place to endure certain things. I know a lot of people feel that, if you do the crime, you must do the time. I think that was a slogan at some point. But as we know, the justice system isn't really fair, so a lot of people are in there for no reason. So yeah, a lot of people do the crime and don't do the time. But more importantly, again, back to the point, once they do their time, whatever the case is, what was given to them, whatever book was given to them at that particular point, they did it. They served. They served their time. That's it. They're no longer a threat to the community. If they were a threat to the community, you would have gave them more time. If they were a threat to the community, you wouldn't have let them out. Whatever you want to say about it, but they did their time. Now that they're out, they need to be fully engaged citizens so we can get back to what we need to be doing in life.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think we definitely need to have another episode on the creation of laws, and what it means for who gets to create these laws, for what purposes, and I think we definitely need to have that coming up soon.
Yeah.
But let's talk. We talked a little bit about Amendment 4,
mm-hmm.
right? It gives returning citizens the ability to be engaged civically, right? So they get to vote. This is extremely important. And I loved that you also mentioned that this does not count for murderers, people who have murdered people, and sex offenders. Now, the other part of this is Amendment, I believe, 11?
Is it 11? Let me see.
We have our laptops tonight. We're talking technicalities.
Yeah, It's a lot of information, and I recommend that you guys. I know you don't have a printout of this, but if you do have your laptop or whatever the case is, I would recommend that you guys go to these sites that we gave you.
I'm typing it again. BeReadyToVote.org. .org websites are usually pretty good. So Amendment 11. Property rights, removal, obsolete provisions, and criminal statutes.
So this is another sandwich one, but I'm going to focus on a part of this text where what it does is it prevents retroactive justice, and I'm going to say it like that, retroactive. And I'm going to put this more so on something that we all know about and we just discussed, we mentioned, the war on drugs. So let's say, for instance, Florida wakes up and gets like Canada and a lot of other states, Canada and a lot of other states. and says, hey, we're going to legalize recreational marijuana for adults, or pretty much. If we do that, when we do that, because we're going to fight that particular battle every day, this language would not allow us to retroactively release those people that have non-violent charges, that are in jail for non-violent drug charges, to be released. This means that when we legalize recreational marijuana, that they still have to serve out whatever time they got. So if somebody has 20 years for X amount of weed or whatever the case is that they have, and they've served 5 years, we legalize it, they still have to sit for the other 15. No, because we can't. That shouldn't happen, because we've come to the understanding, and like we said, like you mentioned earlier, just because something's legal doesn't mean it's moral. Once we come to this understanding that it's not moral, we already know it's not moral. Now we're trying to change the legality of it. Now we need to go ahead and make sure that those people that were in there because it's immoral legal issue are released. Because we woke up and we were wrong. I'm saying we, I'm not really including that particular bunch, but I'm going to say we just to be like more inclusive. We woke up and, we need to go ahead and release that. We need to go ahead and make sure that those people are released. And again, this is for non-violent situations. So, it was a drug situation, but some type of violence happened, they really wouldn't qualify for this particular thing. But anyway, so this is the language that's in Amendment 11, and I want everybody to make sure that you guys pay attention to those different things that are sandwiched, because the other part of that, it talks about removing obsolete language, repealed by voters, and things of that nature, because it talks about obsolete language and what they focus on and how they're going to get you a lot of people. It talks about what's in the Constitution right now, Article 1. It uses the term alien to refer to people, and a lot of people that is a trigger, and that's not something that needs to be used, and it's not a right term to use when it comes to anybody. So a lot of people are going to go into that voting booth. They're going to see this and I want to remove that language from the Constitution. But when you do that, it's also going to make sure that what I just discussed, whatever laws we get rid of, quote unquote, marijuana is the example that I'm giving at this particular point, those people still have to sit there. Now, once you vote, I'm not going to say once you vote no, if you vote no on this, that means that when we legalize recreational marijuana, the argument is able to be made that these people should be released. If you vote yes, that argument cannot be made. You have to get a lot of petitions, or you have to wait 20 years before this is revisited. If you vote no on this, it's not saying it's going to leave that language in there that a lot of people want to get out, the term alien. It's going to leave that in there, but it does not mean that you cannot go back on the next election or pull up some type of get together with your friends, family, community, and get a petition going to remove that particular language later.
So real quick, that's if you vote. So what we're kind of, I don't want to say suggesting, kind of advocating for.
I'm just saying.
Vote yes.
No.
Because I'm reading, because I'm trying to read this, and this is the tough part about these things. That the language is very complicated.
Yes.
And I think this is a point that we've made, I think, before the show, that this is intentionally complicated. It shouldn't be this way. It doesn't have to be this way. But it's intentionally complicated to confuse people. So I'm reading here, and it says, if you vote no, that means it continues to mandate that criminal suspects prosecuted under the law they're accused of breaking, even if the state changes that law.
Yep.
And what we don't want is that. We want people, if the law does change, we want them to also be under that protection. If the law does change, we want them to. This fucking
I love it. See, that's
yeah.
But that's how confusing it is. So again, I'll say this, and we'll try to simplify it because it's crazy how, it'll twist your mind. If you vote no,
on Amendment 11,
on Amendment 11, and one day marijuana was legalized recreationally, if you vote no, marijuana is legalized, the next step would be, do those people that have been arrested for marijuana and are in jail for marijuana, do they need to stay in prison and fulfill whatever time they were given? If you vote no, that means that those people, after marijuana has been legalized, have the ability to appeal and get out. Because whatever law that they broke when it came to marijuana is no longer on the books, so they can appeal to be released from prison. And again, within brackets, this is non-violent crimes. I'm just speaking about like marijuana as an example. If you vote yes, even if a law changes, those people still have to finish whatever time they were given. So if they got, and I'm going to exaggerate here, if they got 15 years
I see what you're saying.
Yeah, if they got 15 years for a dime bag, an ounce, I don't know the measurements.
I'm just
a dime
saying.
bag, an ounce, I'm just saying. If they got
whatever
15
costs
years
$45.
Yeah, whatever costs $45, if they got some time for that and we legalize marijuana, and this is how crazy it is, if they got arrested and sentenced today and got 15 years, and tomorrow we legalize it, that 15 years they still will have to serve. So that's if you vote yes. Does that make sense?
Think compassionately is saying, damn, this is so helpful. I'm glad my grandma ass is still saying wait for this. Yeah. I'm glad this is helpful because this stuff is complicated. I'm reading this stuff now and I was like, what? I was confused, and I'm so glad your explanation definitely kind of broke this down. So can you believe it's been almost an hour already? We have about 5 minutes left.
Really?
Yeah, it's 9:53. It's almost 10.
You got overtime like Bill Maher?
Nah, and we also don't drop words like Bill Maher.
Oh shoot.
Oh.
Well, that's my uncle Bill, not the other Bill.
Oh yeah, because I'm not a fan of Bill Maher actually. Liberal white dude, like I mean, people get excited by liberal white people. White people, just because they're liberal, I'm like, whatever.
Just to let you guys know, this is my first time on Instagram Live. This is my first time doing any type of video. He pulled me out of the sicken level.
My dog got the bird flu. He's still out here. Hey, I appreciate you, man. I appreciate you.
The sicken 9, I think I had like the flu over here, so he dragged us out of here. But this is important. This is how important it is, to break through that barrier, whatever I had going on, to make sure that we get this information to everybody. And what he does is awesome. Woke Wednesdays. I have to look at this camera over here.
We got a couple cameras tonight. Yeah. Feel free to follow the Facebook page, Woke Wednesdays. Yeah. Man, I appreciate you being on the show, man. So we got a couple minutes left. If you had to give some parting words, clearly we only covered Amendment 4, Amendment 11, and it took us some time to even break that down.
Yeah.
So there are 13 amendments on this year's ballot. So there's a lot more. A website that I've kind of been promoting tonight is Be Ready to Vote .org. BeReadyToVote.org. I will type that in one more time here. tovote.org. So it's extremely important to be knowledgeable, to kind of there are cheat sheets out there that might be helpful for when you go vote.
Yeah.
So early voting, I believe, starts October 27th in Florida.
No.
27th?
No,
earlier?
Yeah.
When?
22nd.
22nd. Oh,
we're live and popping on the 22nd. It's go time. It's really go time. And I'll add this in here, get together with your friends. Make this a thing.
Yeah.
Get together with your friends. One of my things as a field director at New Florida Majority, when I came in, is I told them that I want to change the the view that people have on voting. A lot of people feel like voting is a
chore.
A chore. Absolutely, that's exactly what I told them. It's a chore. Like, people hate to do it. Oh, I have to take this much time out to go vote. But no, what we do at New Florida Majority is we change the way that is. You know, we do things like souls to the polls. We have barbecues at polling sites. You know, once you go vote, you go just come out and get your hamburger and hot dog or whatever the case is, with music with your kids, because that actually kicks that lets your children know and experience, like, hey, I remember voting with my dad or my mom or my aunt or whoever like took me. I remember how fun it was. You know, so they have a different concept, a different perception on what voting is, and that type of civic engagement. So do it with your friends. We do voting parties all the time. I'm putting things inside, and I know my coworkers hate me for it, but I'm going to add a lot more things to our event calendar to, you know, so we can, you know, make that happen, because it's very important that we have a different viewpoint on voting. You know, it's something that we should want to do. Civic engagement, we need to start when we're younger. We shouldn't have to wait till we're 30 when we have kids and, you know, some crazy thing happens inside the government, or we have some type of red tide, or, you know, something's impacted, to care about what's going on in our communities. And I don't think it needs to be something that's boring. I mean, the best experience that I had inside of a classroom is when I had a professor that was very engaging, fun, and that's what stuck with me, and I love to go to class at that particular point. It's not a chore. I love going to class. And if voting is fun, you know, you have whatever you want to do in your community, you guys can hit us up at newfloridamajority.com.
Yeah, tag them in the promo video today. Definitely tag them on both my personal page and Instagram page.
Oh, you're awesome. Thank you.
I'm on it, bro. Real quick, Crystal Simone 12 is saying, very informative. Thank you for sharing. I can't wait to cast my vote now that I know more about these amendments. So, man, I appreciate you sliding tonight, bro. I think one of the most powerful things you said tonight was that people like lost their lives. We were killed fighting so we could have, and I say we in an all-encompassing way, anyone who has ever been disenfranchised from casting a vote, so others could vote, right? Maybe they didn't see the benefits of their sacrifice, but we now get to live it. So I think that's probably one of the most powerful points you made tonight. So we have about 2 minutes left. If you could tell everybody a quick little something about voting, what would it be?
A quick little something about voting?
A quick little something, man.
You touched on it. I mean, a lot of people died for this, so if you don't do it for any other reason, do it out of the respect for the people that came before you, that made sure that you have a voice. And that's the least that you can do. Just go vote. I mean, pay attention to your community, because, you know, you live there. There's no turning back from a lot of different things. You have to choose the path that your community goes in. And a lot of things that we vote on or what we don't vote on right now, we might not personally be impacted by, but our kids will. You know, what goes on in the EPA or what the Environmental Protection Agency, we have one in Florida too, what goes on there is going to impact our kids. It's going to impact the fish that you eat. All those things are impacted, so we can't take anything lightly. It's going to impact the school board. You know, it's so many things going on inside of your community, and we have to change the way that we view it. So we have to understand that this is a part of our lives. We take so much time to do other things. People stand in line for hours for a new phone. People stand in the line for hours for shoes.
Not Black Friday.
Black Friday. People stand in line for hours for these things. And that has no impact on your community, which is crazy.
It has an impact on your account. That's what it does.
You know, you're gonna lose a few $100 or $1,000, but this is your livelihood. Like, legit, this is your livelihood, and it only takes a few minutes to go in there, and again, change the way you view it, change the way your kids see it.
And if nothing else, vote for the locks of justice, man. Do it for the locks of justice. Thank y'all so much for tuning in tonight. Thank y'all for tuning in tonight. We'll be at it again next Wednesday, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. New Florida Majority, thank you so much for being here. Emma, thank you so much. Appreciate you stopping through. Always a pleasure. And y'all, go vote. Go vote. Go vote. Go vote. Go vote.
Go vote. Hashtag we're going.
Hey.